This is Robert Mardolacci of the MindShare Learning Report here at the MindShare Workspace, and welcome to This Week in Canadian EdTech, MindShareTV podcast with award-winning professor Chris Crowell at Sheridan College on game design and career pathways. We're going to touch on the Serious Play Conference at TMU happening in Toronto, October 11th to 13th. Thank you for joining me today, Chris Crowell.
Good morning.
Well, sure.
Let me just say congratulations. I saw during the lead-in that it's your 20th anniversary with MindShare. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Well, wow, time flies. It took
does.
20 years to be an overnight success. How about that?
Yes, absolutely.
I like to say passion has no clock, but thank you for those kind words.
Sure.
A little bit about Chris Crowell. He's a bit of a legend in game design. It's such an honor to have Chris join us. Chris Wombat, I'm going to ask him about the Wombat nickname. Crowell is a game designer and creative director with 20 plus years of expertise creating a wide range of games for globally known brands such as NASCAR, Tiger Woods, SimCity, The Sims, Indiana Jones, and Kung Fu Panda, to name a few. In 2013, Chris created Crowell Interactive to focus on working with educators, helping them create engaging and effective game-based learning and gamified digital education experiences. He has worked with leaders in the field such as ClassLab, Pearson, Prodigy Game, TBO, and UNESCO's MGIEP to develop cutting-edge projects such as TBO's Empower suite of classroom games and UNESCO's Chi Learning Portal. And Chris is currently a professor, as I mentioned, in the Bachelor of Game Design program at Sheridan College, which I'm sure you'll tell us more about. He frequently speaks and runs workshops and digital education conferences around the globe. He served on boards of directors of the International Game Developers Association and is founder of Positive Impact Games SIG. In 2014, he was honored to participate in President Obama's White House Educational Game Jam. Well, I want to hear about that too.
That was amazing.
Wow, Chris, fantastic journey for you. This was by accident that you were working as a manager with a payroll company back in the day.
Yes. So I was an ardent user of computers back in the 80s and 90s with my beloved Commodore 64 and Amiga, and I was an artist, digital artist. That was my hobby. I just had it in my mind that I could never actually make a living at that. So I had a serious job during the day, and then I would come home and create things on my computer. And you're right, it was sort of just a really amazing accident. I had friends who were in the computer art business who were working in games, and they heard about just an entry-level position at Electronic Arts. And they had been telling me that I should ditch the suit and go to work for a game company. It would be a much better match for my personality. So I limped into the interview at Electronic Arts. I was on crutches because I had destroyed my Achilles tendon. So I was in a suit with a cast, limping in to have this interview. And they told me that despite my wearing a suit, they felt like I would be a good fit for the team. So
That's amazing.
I got in, yeah.
How many employees did they have at that time?
So I think we had.
You were employee number what?
Well, this was in '94, February of '94, and it was Northern California, and I'm gonna guess it was probably about 500 or 600 folks.
Right. So that was really early days.
It was early days, right? And it was before they had built their own campus in Northern California. We had a couple of buildings that we were occupying in Foster City in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it was really fantastic. So I just came in. I was supporting the artists. I was supporting the art tools, and frankly, I was a terrible support person because I spent a lot of time just in my cube making art with the art tools, and I would just tell everyone else, well, I need to become an expert on these tools, right? So this is work, and then I would be making art. So then from there, I got onto a dev team. I had a fantastic manager, and she found me a spot on a development team. From there, I had a choice to diverge paths to continue in art or to go into this kind of new thing that they were experimenting with called game design. And so I decided to go into the game design path because that's more about sort of thinking about what's happening in the game. And as I was relating to earlier, one of the funny things was this is how early it was that every year when I got a promotion, and I'd bump up to game designer 2, game designer 3, I would have to write the job description for that position because it didn't exist. Even at Electronic Arts, which was one of the, continues to be one of the biggest game companies, there just was no such thing as a game designer. So it was really kind of inventing this kind of a role within the dev team. People obviously have been doing design, but to have a dedicated seat for somebody who just was there thinking about that and separate from the programmers or separate from the artists and separate from the producer, whose job was to really represent the player experience, to make sure that everything was coming together and in order to create something optimal for the player.
Fascinating. And you worked on some pretty cool projects. And I noted the Tiger Woods. I'm a bit of a golfer. Golf is, the simulation now. You can do simulation golf, which is pretty fascinating. The whole concept of interactive and online hands-on learning. It's come of age. It's come full circle too, because that's how we learned back in the one-room schoolhouse.
Yes,
days.
very much so. Right. Through all of human history, you've had this notion of apprenticeships and having someone who knows the craft explaining things and immediately followed up with, or at the same time as the student using their hands and their brains to use the things that the old expert has told them to create and put that knowledge to work immediately within the educational space. And so, with this notion of the one-room schoolhouse and the factory farming, Sir Ken Robinson has a fantastic TED Talk on this, right? And so he was quite the torch to kind of ignite, a revolution in modern education. And so
I had the honor of interviewing Ken when he was in Toronto once.
Oh,
it was one of my highlights besides interviewing you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of a tier difference right there in terms of celebrity for sure. But he's enormously impactful, really, really great thinking. So what this allows is that games now can provide that experiential learning, the ability to take these ideas and concepts and put them to work to overcome challenges. Games are about overcoming challenges towards achieving a goal, right? This is what we do all day in real life, right? All of our jobs are overcoming goals, and overcoming challenges to reach goals. So it's a natural fit to use games.
Absolutely. What was the most memorable, successful game that you worked on that you were part of? I mean,
I would say I think every game project has been a really unique and fantastic experience. But one of the things I think that I've heard from people is on SimCity 4.
Right.
My job when I was brought in there was to, take care of some game design things that were going on. And they had very strong simulation minds working on the team at that point. And so they had really strong functionality happening. And SimCity has a long history of taking that functionality and making it usable by players. So people could sit down in front of it and have all this fantastic technology and systems available to them with the game controls. Game design, however, doesn't stop at mere usability. It has to drive towards engagement. So there's kind of 3 steps there. You need to have functionality, you need to have usability, and then you need to, if you're game design, you need to have engagement. And so my job was to build that engagement, look at what was there, make it even more accessible and interesting, and enrich the feedback loops
Wow.
for players so that they could really understand that if you plunk a school down, yes, over time your education scores will go up. But in the meantime, you've got children arriving in the morning, like a bunch of minivans would pull up and kids jump out and run screaming into the school, and a bell would go off. And then at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the bell would ring again, and the kids would run screaming out of school and, and go running out, stuff like that. Right.
Right.
Was what I would put in there to kind of liven things up and really make the world
Right.
feel alive.
What's interesting is one in our top 10 EdTech report we released this morning, we included an article on a report on the focus being on student engagement, leveraging EdTech tools for student engagement and storytelling.
Right. Yes. So this is something also I think that's very powerful about games in education, because games are literally, as I just said, they're all about the engagement. And engagement comes when a user or a player or a student, whichever slot we want to put them in, perceives the situation, can understand what's taking place, has goals that they're trying to accomplish, and there's interesting puzzles and challenges for them to sink their teeth into and try to understand what they have available to them, decipher the knowledge that the game has given them, and be smart and feel smart by connecting those dots and overcoming the challenge. Right. So all interesting games have a puzzle aspect to them where the answer is not revealed. The player must figure it out and then execute on that to overcome the challenge. And so that's, that works really well for games, and we can absolutely create games where the clues that you receive are the information, the knowledge that we want players to take away, right? So we give them that knowledge, and then we require them to use it effectively the way that you would in real life, in this game situation, right? So it's like it's point of sale kind of action taking place there. Yeah.
It's about relatability to real life examples, which
Yes,
we didn't experience back in the day when I was in high school, unfortunately, unless I was doing my the shop classes, as they call them back. The technical courses were very much hands-on, but not the other classes. But so herein lies the challenge. 9% of professors and faculties of education, ISTE, the International Society for Tech and Learning Education, in the report they just tabled, are using EdTech to prepare future teachers. Only 9%. And it's US based. I presume Canada perhaps has a higher percentage. How, there's such a skills gap at the end of the day when these teachers, new teachers, are going into the classroom not having experienced tech-infused pedagogy training.
That it's tough. Societies change slower than technology. So we have the technology to provide solutions, but we've got institutions and players within the institutions who may or may not be on board with replacing some of the previous materials and expertise with new forms of expertise. But I think, Robert, you're you're one of my sources to find out about what's going on in the industry. Would you not agree with me that 9% used to be 6%, which used to be 3%, which used to be 1%, right? So over my time, over the past 10 years, I've seen this go from kind of a niche notion of, we really have to defend the idea of using games and other forms of ed tech to better deliver education to students, to now, I think a healthy portion of educators are on board with the idea. There may be 9% who are actively using it, but there's many more who would be
Right.
open to it. And this is another place where I come in, right? Is that
Right.
I come in and I can help demystify a lot of these kinds of things,
Absolutely.
because it is, games and technology are absolutely not the same as education. And so we need to understand this is an entirely different domain. Or in fact, tech is not the same as games in any way. Like those of us in games will use technology to deliver games, but it's not, you know what I mean? So
Right.
we're partners with technology, but we are not technology. We are something else entirely, and
Right.
education is its own thing. And so we just need to have effective partnerships, and that just takes time to work out. And frankly, now that I am teaching, I took on teaching because I wanted to understand better what my education partners' lives were like. And holy
Right.
moly, is there so much more. I thought I was busy when I was making games. Teachers have got so much going on under the water, right? Just like the duck,
Right.
right? You've got this much of the duck is above
Absolutely.
water, and
And you can
everything
never
else is
do it. You
going
can always
furiously.
do more. You can always
Yes,
do more. There's never enough time because there's always preparation and supporting kids as much as you can
right.
within a realistic timeline. Talk to me a
Yeah.
little bit about your experience in President Obama's White House Educational Game Jam. That sounds pretty cool.
That was amazing. I was working at the time. I was working with Pearson on developing a math game idea to see how we could construct things. And there's an old friend of mine, Mark DeLaura, was working in the White House at the time, specifically in the education sector, representing EdTech. So I'm sure you must know
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Mark. And so he felt that there was a need in the education folks at the White House and other people in the White House to understand that technological solutions didn't mean, oh, this is going to take 5-10 years and cost hundreds of millions of dollars, right, to build some kind of super complicated enterprise software. That in fact, a lot of technical solutions can come about relatively quickly. And so to demonstrate that, he organized this educational game jam. And so I found out about it. I, those of us on the Pearson team collectively just kind of put ourselves together and said, all right, we're going to go. And so I was there for a week, and we worked on a game called Who Killed Lincoln? So it was a kind of a point and click adventure game, murder mystery kind of a thing, where you take on the role of a Union officer who's investigating the crime of assassination against Lincoln. And it was fantastic. We had a couple of folks from the Smithsonian who came in to provide information. So we have this really fun point and click little, like, just part of a game that we put together to sort of prove the concept. And it was all absolutely real historical facts. And I
Wow.
learned a ton of stuff that I had
Wow.
no idea was taking place. Did you know it was a whole conspiracy and that they were attacking the Secretary of State and the Vice President also? Like, there was a lot of stuff going on. It wasn't just John Wilkes Booth jumping off a
Wow.
balcony
I wasn't aware of that.
a fit of anger. Yeah, no, there was, right. Like, and so you then go through in this game, you go through and you interview people and you follow up on clues, and you enter the clues in your clue book, and you evaluate based on your trust in the witness and the evidence, and you give weight to the evidence to reach a conclusion about who's guilty and who's innocent. And then at the end of the game, we compare your findings with what the justice system at the time found, and which would then lead to a
Fascinating.
conversation about not only the history, but how does law and order and decisions of guilt, how does that work out, and how does our modern mindset lead to things versus
Right.
back in the 1800s, right? So yeah, it
Very
was just
cool.
what a
Now,
time.
now,
Yeah.
did you actually get to meet President Obama at the time, or
No,
he
no,
he wasn't
sadly
in the house? He wasn't in
he
the house.
wasn't. No, he wasn't. we did get a fantastic tour of the White House, so that was pretty
Yeah.
cool. And we were working in a wing of it, but we did get. I'm sure I still have these somewhere. I ended up with like little White House napkins that I took,
Nice.
and and I got my wife a White House coffee mug, right? So,
Nice.
but it was just it was really a magical time, and you know uh, the Secretary of Education came in and saw our projects at the end of the week, and there was some really great things. There was a game about running the electoral college, right? How to spend advertising and influence voters in different states,
Wow.
to understand
That's
how the
pretty cool.
electoral college works out. There was just
Right.
all kinds of really, really great ideas that were being explored there. So, it,
So
this is the kind of thing. Yeah, it's not just like, oh, it's like when we think of educational games, we think, oh, it's going to be a math game, because math is pretty easy to turn into a game, but it's any knowledge can be conveyed through the experience of the game.
it kind of reminds me of one of our legendary games back in the day when I worked for
Hmm.
Kevin O'Leary,
Hmm.
Oregon Trail,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It was a challenge, and so was Yukon Trail. We had
Yeah.
a whole trail series, and I think that game still exists today because there is longevity to some of these games because there
Yes.
is authentic learning,
Yes.
hands-on learning.
And I think that is a key to the longevity, right? Like this is reality. It's not changing. So like Oregon Trail, that's that's how it was, right? And so what is that? It was people every day overcoming challenges to attain their goal, which was to, reach
Right,
the West. And so that's perfect for building a game out of. Um, and it's a great reflection of real life. And the power of this is that you gain understanding by walking the walk. You can learn some things just by hearing people talk about it and imagining things, but when you're actually needing to experience them and really solve problems using this information, and it makes it real to you, that's first person experience. It's not some imagined third
right,
person kind of a thing. So that's the power. It's not easy
right,
to make good games. It's hard work,
right.
and you need to think through a lot of things. But
But
it's
the tools today versus 20 years ago are and AI is creeping into it, no doubt.
Yes, yes. So I had my son come in just the other day. He's working on a game with his friend, and he says he just went and he used Chat GPT to generate code blocks. He had a thing he wanted to have happen in the game, and so he just ran a few iterations within Chat GPT to generate some code
Are you
that he could then
serious?
just. This happened like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah,
and he just dropped the code in. This kid is an artist. He's not a programmer. God, I've tried to get him to code, but he doesn't. So he came. It
right,
just thrilled me. He says, "Yeah, he was dropping code in. So he dropped the code in. He'd run the game. Things would work somewhat, and he could spot what wasn't working. He'd go back in and he'd kind of change his instructions to the AI, and it would generate more code. And he'd take out the old stuff and plug the new one in and see how that worked. So he's not a coder in any way, shape, or form. He's a rational thinker, but he's not a coder. So I don't know where this is going to go, but
right.
this is yet another blocker to creativity, that he's using AI as a tool to unblock his access to creating something that he wants to create. So that's fantastic. So we've got AI for that. We've got 3D printing, so you can just, they're everywhere. And so people are making physical things from that. So yeah, this technology
Fascinating.
is amazing. So we're
And
here to see this, Robert. This is great. This is
and
another
and
revolution that's taking place in
and
our lifetime.
fast forward to today, you continue to be in the saddle doing your consulting and
Yeah.
also teaching a couple of courses at Sheridan. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating what you mentioned earlier off air in preparation. Talk to me a little bit about the courses you're teaching, because I'd love to be
Sure.
involved again
Yeah.
as
Oh,
I
we're
was
definitely
in
going
the
to have you
past.
back, I'm
Yeah,
sure, to speak. So you were kind enough to come in and speak to our capstone students last year. So right now at Sheridan, what I'm doing is I'm working with the capstone students, which is the fourth year, the final year of the 4-year game design curriculum. And in this final year, they form teams and spend 2 semesters creating a game. That's going to be the most polished thing that they've created so far in the program, using all the tools that we've given them up to that point, which is not only just flat out game design, but we have a heavy stress on how to work effectively together as a team. Game development and software development is almost always a team sport of some kind, and so you really need to understand how to work effectively with others, understand what it is that you do on the team and what other people do. And first off, don't get in each other's way, but better yet, allow others to work better because of the kind of work that you're doing. So that's a big focus of what we do with the capstone program there. Thank you. That's it. The Honors Bachelor of Game Design there at Sheridan. And so what I'm doing right now in capstone is I am running a course that is focused on asking each student to reflect on what it is that they want to do for their professional development. There's a lot of different flavors of game design, all the way from programming to art to systems design to mechanics design to game economy balancing. All these are different subsets within sort of this big umbrella of game design. And so I work with students who I'm forcing them to reflect on what it is, what are they good at? What do they want to do? What will people pay them for? How can they identify and communicate what their value proposition is to potential employers and potential teammates? So just some help with that, and let each one of them really polish up and shine as the unique creative individual that they are when they're going to
and,
be in the games industry.
and you no doubt have some notable alumni that have graduated and gone on to achieve great success out of this program.
We do. We've got a number. We have one of the early graduates. The program's not actually that old. I think it's 6 years old now. So no, must 6, 7. I don't know. I'm there part time, and I wasn't there from the beginning, so I don't have all the
Right.
back history of things, right? But I do know that we've got at least one game studio, a local game studio in Toronto, was founded by a capstone team that
Right.
created a pretty good game and have gone on to build a business with that. And then we have a lot of students that land in all the different flavors of game development that's taking place around in Ontario and Quebec. So we've got students who have landed jobs at Ubisoft and Electronic Arts and all the other different game studios that are around. So
That's amazing. And so there are a number of career pathways that you could
mhm.
pursue, of course.
Yes. And I just want to say something else too.
Yeah.
Game development, game design is about engaging interactivity. So it's not just a digital game that you would boot up on your computer or on your console or on your phone. We're talking about board games. We're talking about escape rooms, interactive museum exhibits, training simulators for the military. We've got
Right.
some students who have gone on to work with the United Nations on training simulators for de-escalation skill sets for United Nations peacekeepers. Uh,
Right.
Games about sort of climate change and crop management and all these different kinds of things. So it's not just sort of your classic thing when you think of as video games. This
Yeah.
notion of game is
Well, and then AR and
growing.
VR, right? You got the mixed reality
Yes,
that's happening too. And it's
right.
fascinating. Now you've got these goggles that are wireless now, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
that
So yeah,
creates, yeah.
one of our capstone teams last year chose to go to really challenge themselves, and they created a wireless VR headset game, which that's a technology that's still being worked on and improved. It's still very very fresh. At least this latest commercial version of it. I tried out a virtual reality headset back in the 90s at Electronic Arts. We were
Right.
considering using it for world building, but it was not ready for that
Yeah.
at that time for sure.
And I see that Sue Bowl, a legend in the gaming space, has moved her conference from California up to Toronto with TMU
Yes,
coming up. So I'll be participating in that in a
yes.
couple of weeks. And you've no doubt spoken a number of times and will be there.
I have presented at Serious Play, and typically most years I'd be running a workshop for educators there to just sort of a kind of an introduction to creating effective educational games for any educator who's interested. So I usually run my make a game workshop there. It runs for a few hours, and they end up making ugly prototypes that deliver the learning outcomes. And so there is a process that educators can follow, and it can be very daunting. A lot of educators have really great ideas for what they want to do, but they don't really know where to get started.
Right.
So this year, because of my school curriculum, in addition to teaching at Sheridan, I also just this semester started teaching 1 day a week at Mohawk to first year game design students,
Right.
to just give them a firm grounding on what is game design and what do you need to think about. So, but all of the game designers, all these students are aware of this Serious Play conference, and a lot of them are very excited about this notion of having their work be impactful to the world. These students are really want the world to become better, right? And they
That's the difference between when we were trying to get a job back in the days,
yes,
baby boomers, versus today's graduates who want to make an
yeah.
impact.
They definitely are.
Right.
So I tell them, listen, it's perfectly okay to come out and just want to work on making games and gain mastery over your craft. But a lot of them are like, no, if I can come out right now and be working for some game that's got positive impact on the world, they're all for it. So we've got a number of students who are intending on going to the conference. It's going to be very exciting for them. it's it's really great to just see this multi-generational experience, right? Because you've got gray hairs like me, and you've got all the way to these students who are just really fresh out of high school. And we're all excited at the idea that, wow, we value this notion of education, and we all feel that what we think of as sort of the standard paradigm of sit in a classroom in your chair and don't say anything while the teacher dispenses wisdom at the front of the class,
Right.
and that's not ideal. Some people can thrive in that, but the majority of people really need that experiential learning will really deepen
100%.
deepen the absorption of the information.
Well, Chris, with that, I'm just, you're inspiring me to twist your arm to join us on a panel at our 14th Canadian EdTech Summit in Ottawa, which is happening
Hmm.
in 35 days from now.
Okay.
We do have a panel on envisioning the ideal learning environment for the future. So I think you sharing your story about the design thinking of what school should be like would be
Hmm.
incredibly powerful. So we can talk about that off air, but I'm
Sure.
extending an invitation to you to join us there. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon or this
Hmm.
morning. We're getting ready to go into the afternoon.
Yeah.
It's been a fascinating conversation. It gives me great hope for the future of learning and our next generation of leaders and the impact they're going to make in society through serious plays, through serious games,
Hmm.
and it's not all about shoot 'em up games, right? And
It's yeah.
that's and I could see that your mindset is well beyond that, and I think the kids that come into your program also understand that as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, games are not some scary medium, and they're not restricted to shoot 'em ups any more than books or movies are only about shoot 'em ups. They
Right,
include that, but there's so much more that can be done.
right.
And my students inspire me every day, so it's fantastic. I'm passing along the energy that I get from them. Right, they're really great to work with, and you're right. This is who's coming. Right, so the best we can do is kind of plant some positive seeds and and let them take responsibility for making that happen.
With that, thank you again, Chris.
Thanks.
That was
Always
Chris
a pleasure.
Crowell. Thank you. Absolutely. Professor of game design at Sheridan College and consultant, legend, and award-winning game designer. My name is Robert Martellacci, the Mindshare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.mindshare learning to get your latest issue. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.